All right. We're back. We're back in Los Angeles. We are back with another late show. I might have a guest or two tonight. I don't know. But I will try to go until midnight, maybe a little longer. Who knows? But we're going to talk about watches. It's kind of miserable here in Los Angeles. The weather is possibly worse than what I left on the East Coast, which is a little disappointing, considering that usually this is the bright side of this place, the weather. But we'll see. We'll soldier on. So we'll start with some exciting releases from Japan. We already talked about Seiko's celebrations to for their 115th anniversary in watchmaking, and that's something that they are actually commemorating with two different watches, apparently. So let's start with the one we did not talk about yet, and we can go back to their reproduction of a piece from their archive, from their museum later, which was the very first. Um, of course, they may have taken inspiration from uh, a very classical piece to commemorate their 115th anniversary in watchmaking. But Seiko is also, of course, known in modern time, in contemporary time, at least since the 60s, also as one of the best makers of dive watches. And what better way to celebrate again their continued existence and excellence with another Save the Ocean edition. Sorry, by the way, I meant to say 110th anniversary, not 115th. So that's my correction there. This is going to be a limited edition release of 5,000 pieces, so not that limited after all. It has a kind of polar monochromatic look, a soft gray on the bezel, um, a textured snow white design or pattern on the dial, uh, quite a discreet date display, lodged right there between 4 and 5 o'clock. The crown itself, traditionally placed at 4 o'clock, as it is usually the case with Seiko's diver watches and diving inspired watches, right? So it does not actually impede with the movement of your wrist, so that it does not actually obstruct the movement of your wrist. Um, I always thought it was quite nifty, but especially with this sort of cushion shaped case, it just also fits. I feel this is even a more cohesive design when you have a cushion shaped case than having the crown at 3 o'clock somehow. Don't ask me why. I can't immediately tell you, but there is something about the relatively unusual shape. Of course, by now the cushion shape is actually quite traditional for a diver watch, so um, that doesn't necessarily count. But somehow, both of those design elements um, come together. I think, along with the shift of the date display to 4.5 o'clock, you have a design that seems a little more balanced than most other newer diver watches. I think this is again going to be a hit. Somehow, I like the 5 row bracelet on this. Just generally, I have a thing for monochromatic watches, and here you have something that is mostly in tones of silver and gray, um, except for the seconds hand, which is quite stylized and in blue. So that seems to be, I think, absolutely a great piece from Seiko. Again, I'm not sure if they're already sold out or what, because there is not a price point indicated here. But Seiko Prospect watches of this range, of SPB 300 range, are generally around the 1500 mark. Um, so I'm assuming that it will be priced accordingly, and probably not much more than that, unless it is perhaps a little less. I don't know just yet, but SPB 333 is going to be yet another watch that Seiko is releasing to celebrate their 110th year in watchmaking in a limited run of 5,000 pieces. Oh, thank you guys. Steel Steez says, I have an SPB 301, which this one seems to have taken inspiration from. I absolutely love the cushion case. I think for divers, it has a certain charm, right? You know, the all the Turtle series and Captain Willards and other sorts of cushion case divers are, I think, they're their own genre now. They're as much loved as any classic diver, as Blancpain 50 Fathoms, as Rolex Submariner, and as many others, as an Omega Seamaster. I also much prefer the date at 3 o'clock position versus this one at the 4 or 4.5. I understand that. I understand that. I mean, sometimes don't fix something that's not broken, right? I thought this was a nice touch, especially since it's a minimalist approach, right? You know, it's just a small circular opening. Maybe they tried to be a little more discreet, and that's why they pushed it at 4.5 to 4.5. Um, but the usual day date display of Seiko's entry level divers, I've always found very endearing. So that belongs at 3 o'clock, because anywhere else it would be too clunky and too interfering. Jake Brooks, thank you so much. The man of the hour, Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour. Well, you know, I'm a little bit of both, to be honest. I can be sweet, I can be sour. Um, and as the good old book says, man, it's, you know, there's a time for everything. There's a time for everything. So sometimes you need to be sour, sometimes you need to be sweet, sometimes you need to be salty. There's a time for everything. Steel Steez with the pumpkin head. I like it. It's a 6R35 movement, so it will be at most 1500 USD, at minimum 1200 USD. That's what I was guessing. Look, I mean, it's a limited edition, so conventionally, even Seiko sometimes puts a premium on these sorts of watches. Um, you would think in this case, Seiko being really the brand of the people more than anything, that they would want to join people in celebrating. So it should be around 1500, hopefully a little less, but you never know. So I think, yeah, I honestly, I have no qualms to pick with the traditional placement at 3. If you ask me, I'd rather not have a date display, but I know for a lot of watches that have a utilitarian cast that are offered at this particular price point, it's almost a must, um, to have a date display. So I understand. I don't particularly mind it. And in this case, I really think that they tried to hide it between 4 and 5, rather than have an entire display, with the day date, etc., which is something that, again, I absolutely adore about SKX. I absolutely adore about Seiko 5. I have no problem with it because it's, again, it's something that introduces some sense of cognitive dissonance at the price point, right? Seiko 5 is supposed to be the entry level. SKX used to be one of the entry level Seiko watches, yet you have the kind of functionality, you have the kind of quote unquote complication that you usually have in prestige models. Um, Obviously the Rolex Day Date comes to mind, the so-called presidential watch, but also many models in Audemars Piguet's Royal Oak range, for example, that have that owl named look with the day and date in two different pointers. Two different eyes, so to speak. But anyway, I'm using too much on Seiko usually, so I might uh, as well drop it. The dry down is an interesting point here. I believe a date placement between 4 and 5 for Seiko signifies it's rated for diving. I think most of the Prospect series should be ISO certified. I have my King Turtle, um, which has the day date display, um, and that is absolutely certified for diving. But I don't know if you're talking about a particular kind of certification that goes beyond the standard ISO. Um, but again, if I'm missing something, please do not hesitate to clarify. But yeah, my SRPE 05, which is a Seiko Prospex, never mind at the entry level, of course, has a day date display at 3 o'clock, and it is certified for diving as far as I know. And of course, there was another model that Seiko is introducing for 2023, again to celebrate their 110th anniversary in watchmaking. This was something that was going to list around $1,300 or 1,300 um, euros. Really, that's how I read it. I think that's the case with the white birch SPB 333 that we just talked about as well. It will be around $1,300. By the way, one thing I do need to say, that movement is really quite a decent movement, right? 6R35, 70 hours of power reserve. You basically have 3 days there. That's pretty respectable. Um, and you might say at that level, when you're already spending a little more than $1,000 on a watch, you do expect these things, but still, that's good power reserve. That's a very reliable sports watch, and I think a great watch for just about anyone. Someone who might have a nascent interest in watches, someone else who has been collecting Seiko divers and has had an admiration or commitment to Seiko over the years, um, someone who likes that white birch uh, dial design pattern and somehow wants a bargain um, entry point into that and into the kind of dial designs that Seiko has taken a lot of plaudits for more recently. This could be great. And by the way, the other watch that Seiko introduces this time for the Presage series for their 110th anniversary in watchmaking, is the SPB 359. And that's another watch that really distinguishes itself by its dial, first and foremost. I don't think you can get this sort of enamel dial in many other places for around $1,300. This is another watch Seiko has coming out in January. And it's actually a kind of remake of one of the first watches that Seiko has made. I want to show you that, but let's take a look at this one first. Enamel dial, these lovely stylized Breguet numerals with the 12 at noon accented with the red, beautiful heat blued hands. The subdial actually at 6 o'clock, you might mistake it at first glance for small seconds, but it's actually a pointer date, right? So that's actually the date. The indicator at 9 o'clock is the power reserve, which is about 42 hours. And there is a centrally deployed seconds hand as well. I think it's a very elegant watch and has that air of a conversion piece, right? You know, as if it was once a pocket watch that was then converted into a wristwatch. And again, the perfectly round case and the oversized onion crown, as well as, of course, the aesthetics of the dial, has a lot to do with that implied heritage of a pocket watch. And I think this is, again, a beautifully designed piece and a great way to honor the more than 1 century of legacy and past that Seiko has in watchmaking. This will be a little more limited, 2,500 pieces. Comes on this very rustic and suggestive leather strap. And this is basically a remake of a Laurel watch that Seiko had made, as you can see here, which was their first wristwatch, right? You can clearly see the inspiration, of course, from the dial design to even the spade hands for the hours and minutes, the enlarged onion crown, and just the hinges that were attached to the case for the strap. This is the piece. And I think it's really a beautiful idea that they decided to make a remake of the Laurel and introduce also a kind of Seiko Prospex workhorse diver watch with some of the design elements that we came to associate with Seiko in the late 20th century and in the early 21st century. So they're kind of covering both of their bases, pardon me, and really leaving nothing to chance when it comes to their particular heritage. Aiden, how are you doing, man? Dry Down says, correction, I believe it's the crown placement, not date. My bad. Yeah, I think it's almost Seiko universal when it comes to the crown placement at 4 o'clock. I think almost all of their diver watches have that. I'm sure there's an exception. If you have something to teach me, this channel is always open to that. So please come up with examples. But a lot of the contemporary Seikos that I have seen that uh, are either inspired by their vintage divers or actually ISO certified divers watches have their crown placement at 4 o'clock. So you are right, Dry Down. I don't think the date placement has anything to do with that, but hey, I might be wrong. Feel free to correct me always. Um, Steel Steez says, "Oh wow, that looks pretty nice. Actually, I love the Arabic numerals. Gives me Vacheron Historique Américain 1921 vibes." Yes, the Breguet numerals. I think it's really a vibe. I mean, it's. I know this is kind of young people speak that I. Um, hesitate to adopt sometimes, but at times there's hardly a better word for this kind of feeling that you can't necessarily articulate in words. I think Breguet numerals are usually very charming, and they really give you this aesthetic of the interwar period almost immediately, right? In Seiko's case, of course, it goes all the way back to the beginning of the century, right? If you go to Seiko's beginnings in watchmaking, that's 1912. Um, but yes, when you think of Breguet numerals on wristwatches or stylized Arabic numerals, that's very much the interwar period. That's very much the Art Deco period, and really, it's almost directly that sort of historic reference almost immediately conjured, and I really like this Seiko Presage that they are going to release for 2023, which basically connects them back to 1913 and the Laurel, which was the first wristwatch that they had made. Um, I think an example of that they still hold proudly in their museum. I've never been to Seiko Museum. I've never been to Japan, period. So I can't testify to that, but I'll take their word for it. I think again, in both cases, both the SPB 359, which has this beautiful white enamel dial with the Breguet numerals, stylized Arabic numerals, and the SPB 333, which has that white birch dial pattern. Both of these pieces, in addition to their collectability as anniversary pieces, I think offer some additional um, aesthetic value, uh, and it's really cool for Seiko to celebrate their anniversary not only with a throwback piece but also some with a release that looks forward as well. And of course, SPB 333 is again 6R35 caliber self-winding piece, whereas the SPB 359 is actually hand mount, and I'm sure it will be a joy to wind it with that lovely oversized onion crown as well. Aiden says, make Rolex great again. Hey, I mean, direct your inquiries to the Vistov Foundation. We actually don't have any control over the future trajectory of the brand at all. Daytona, Daytona. I mean, we love the Daytona here. Um, my friend JB, who was in the audience, maybe he will come and show you a couple of Daytonas that I think in and of themselves make a respectable collection. Of course, he has more, but those are really the crown jewels. Daytona is a watch that made me come around, honestly, because even in the early days of this channel, I'm sure you can probably make like a 15-minute video of me saying I'm not a chronograph guy. Um, but be that as it may, I have actually um, fallen in love with chronographs. I have started in my own way collecting chronographs in a very short time period, and I have certainly, um, hey, I have certainly stopped worrying and learned to love the Rolex Daytona. Um, I'm still a vintage and neo vintage guy. You know, if I can afford it, I love the 60s Rolex pieces. Um, right now, you know, what I can afford is mostly the 80s and 90s. So, you know, on the verge of vintage and neo vintage pieces. And I love my four digit and 5 digit Rolexes. And I think the 16520 is one of the ultimate references, one of the great Rolexes to have. And that's the thing about the slogan, by the way, make Rolex great again, Aiden. Um, you know, that's one thing that evolved in my mind, and I don't think I will change my position on that. I used to have a certain resentment even in my outlook towards contemporary Rolex, right? Because of how much they have changed. And rest assured, of course, Rolex is one of those brands that actually change at a glacial pace, right? That also don't necessarily fix things that are not broken. They don't really want to start at a blank slate. They would rather improve on things that they have technically and ultimately, you know, brush up a few things cosmetically from one generation to another. But even then, especially when you had for the professional models these super cases and maxi dials, I just felt that they were too big, that they were almost toy-like, that they had not much to do with what made Rolex great for me. But then I realized specifically how partial my own view was, and how a lot of these contemporary models had so much to offer to so many other people, and how even within uh, this entire spectrum of modern Rolex in the 21st century, they had a few things here and there that still piqued my fancy, still tickled my pickle, whether it was because of an element of design, because of their proportion. You know, I had a yearning for the Sea Dweller 43, the anniversary model, the 50th anniversary piece for quite a while until I decided it was really too big for me. Um, I still love the Explorer 36. I love it even more in two tone. You know, it's so it's so wrong that it's right. It's so bad that it's good. Um, I love it, and I love the Daytona because I think to this day, Rolex was smart enough that once they had a hit, uh, especially around the turn of the millennium with the Daytona, um, they didn't mess with it. They didn't mess with the design. They didn't mess with the proportions of the case. Um, with the change of the caliber, of course, the placement of the subdials, etc., changed in relation to the crown. I won't get too OCD about it, but it's not like nothing has changed. Nevertheless, that was one model that Rolex really preserved in bubble wrap, and they have been rewarded for it so far because it's an absolute classic. It's timeless. It's almost a universal. It's unisex. Almost everyone loves it. So Daytona is a classic, right? You wouldn't kick it out of bed for eating crackers. Everyone would love a Daytona. So I've come around, right? I just realized actually, let it stay that way. Let contemporary Rolex stay as it is, as its own thing, as distant as possible from the classic iconography of the brand, so we can appreciate it both for what it is, right? So if you want to tap into Rolex's greatness, go pre 2000. Go to models that have a plastic crystal. Go to models that still have tritium on the dial. Maybe that luminous material took on a certain kind of patina and aged into this beautiful eggshell shade, or um, kind of like a cream or even pumpkin like patina. Who knows? That's the greatness, right? For me, that's what makes Rolex great. For other people, they're like, oh no, I mean this is a flimsy bracelet. This has someone else's memories on it. This doesn't have a movement with a respectable power reserve. This is not shock resistant. I understand. It's okay. So we can have at least two, three different uh, schools of Rolex. Actually, I think there are 4 or 5 different kinds of um, pockets or areas where you can collect Rolex, and we can talk about this in depth on some other day. But I think it is important to realize uh, how great Rolex was for a certain time period and how it is still great in its own way, but it's certainly not the sheriff in town anymore, even though the numbers, of course, say otherwise, right? In terms of the sheer number of sales, units, revenue, however you want to count it, Rolex is still king, but it's not the only king in town. Steel Steez says, I would love for Tudor to revive their heritage Submariner. That would be an instant pickup. See, that's where we would, I think, disagree a little bit, Steel Steez. I'll get back to that in a little bit. Same here with contemporary Rolex. I felt the same sentiment, which I described as resentment. I do like modern Rolex. I have also come around, but at heart, I'm an old Rolex fan. In fact, I would choose a pre-ceramic sub any day over a modern sub. Hey man, I'm picking up my Rolexes back tomorrow, and I cannot wait to put my 5513 back on the wrist. I cannot wait for that reunion. Um, but for the same reasons, Steele, I said I don't want necessarily today's Rolex to put its hand into the vintage cookie jar. I would say the same thing about Tudor. You know, Tudor already has a lot, um, a lot that it takes from the shared heritage of Rolex and Tudor. I think it would be a little off color if they simply put Mercedes hands on a Black Bay 58 and made a Submariner out of it. I think um, it would double dip. It would infringe on Rolex's territory. I feel like Rolex's tendency, especially with the boutique model they are establishing for Tudor in a very clear, intentional way, is to give Tudor a very particular kind of brand identity. And in the decade that has passed since the revival of the Black Bay, I think Tudor has established that in so many ways, right? Tudor is no more second fiddle to Rolex. Tudor is not the bargain bin brand anymore. Tudor is not the spare parts brand anymore. Tudor has its own vibe. It has its on aesthetics. It has its unique proportions. It has its own recognizability. It has its own iconography, you know, to the point that they can come back with the Ranger, right? To the point that they can now resurrect, revive, and reissue their own models. Um, I think Rolex will play that quite safe in some time to come and keep them separate, right? No one is fooling themselves, right? I'm not really talking about um, Tudor completely being its own thing. That's like, um, you know, that would be like saying, hey, um, you know, Megadeth has nothing to do with Metallica, right? That would be outrageous. That would be that would not be right to Metallica. That would not be right to Dave Mustaine, right? So to say that Rolex and Tudor are different flavors of the same heritage, I think does justice to both, and they will continue to rejuvenate themselves from the same fount, right? I don't need to give an example of every single thing that Tudor did for Rolex that Rolex has now integrated to the main line. As much as Tudor has uh, eaten from Rolex's breadcrumbs, it has already fed Rolex back in terms of material innovation, in terms of certain um, design elements of inversion. For example, the left-hand drive was within the Rolex umbrella, within the Rolex family, within the Wilsdorf family, was Tudor's thing before it was Rolex's. Um, Tudor had a titanium dive watch long before Rolex introduced the Deep Sea Challenge. Uh, and trust me, that sort of transactional relationship will continue for some time to come, but both brands will have their own territory without having too much overlap. Um, but yes, Tudor used to make Submariners, and I loved them too. I wish I actually collected them when they were basically dirt cheap and dime a dozen. But I don't see into the future. You know, I'm not a diviner. Aiden Valento says, "Do you like Archie's new watch?" I love Archie, but I have not watched a single minute of Archie Luxury, um, Dungeon, whatever else. In the last few months, I have not watched a single minute of any of these shows, to say nothing of the garbage that is associated with Rabbit Ears and his crew of Despicables. So, unfortunately, I don't know what Archie's new watch is. If he wants to come on my panel and share it, hey, there's always room for Archie Luxury on this channel. Um, I am forever indebted to him. I am always influenced by him. Over the years, I have learned a lot from him, although increasingly less, I have to admit. But it's my hope that Archie will have a comeback. And if he wants to share um, what he's doing on that comeback, he can always jump on my channel unannounced or for an interview. I would welcome him with open arms. He is Archie, man. He's a legend. I don't know if you guys saw it, but that was a that was an unwitting tribute in the most recent Revolution magazine video to Archie Luxury. Everyone knows Archie. It's hard for them to sometimes admit whether they like him, whether they enjoy him, but everyone knows who Archie Luxury is. Um, I don't watch the channel anymore, but that doesn't say anything about him. Uh, but it does say anything, something about me and how I feel about how I was treated on that platform. But that's water under the bridge. I've gone my own way, and I'm very happy with it. Um, yes, going back to the Tudor Submariner idea, Steve says, perhaps that's a good point. It would be a step backwards for Tudor. And he says, I love me some Megadeth and Metallica. What? Hey, man, old school, Metallica has, it was a thing of, it was a thing of nature, man. They were something. Cliff Burton in bass, Dave Mustaine in lead guitar. It must have been an experience to listen to them live. Um, yeah, and Megadeth, I think until the songwriting became a little formulaic, um, it was also one of the best ever. So many hits between those two bands, man. I even honestly, I even loved a lot of Metallica's Load, the Garage Days or whatever it was that they called that album that they had with covers. Um, what a great band, and just that, yeah, man. So many memories. I won't even get into it, but everything that other people hate about Metallica, I think I like even more. Um, so I don't even know what to say. I might get a little emotional, but yeah, the Metallica lineup, I think, um, you know, Hetfield's vocals, that people love to hate. I love it unabashedly. Kirk Hammett, he might have, a little bit too much fun with the wah wah pedal, but I don't mind it. I think those are some legends. Having made that kind of music and sold so many records for both bands, I think it says something. Racing R, he's going to be my guest tomorrow around this time. He says, just got the cat is out of the bag, just got the Tudor Black Bay Pro. I'm very happy with the 39 millimeter. I think that's a very nicely sized case. That's a beautifully proportioned watch. What will be the first watch to go on Mars? I don't know. I don't know. I remember, by the way, since we were already talking about it, when I was um, when I was on Archie Luxury, I remember I made the mistake of saying um, one day that space exploration doesn't excite me, and I could care less about, the moon watch or whatever, even though I love the Speedmaster. Uh, and I said I much prefer deep sea exploration. I'm more smitten with divers watches and those kinds of pieces. And I remember the kind of hate I got in the chat. I mean, it was flowing. Um, so I always hesitate to express strong opinions about this kind of thing. But as much as I hesitate, I cannot help myself. I don't care, man. I mean, whoever we can shoot up in a clown rocket to Mars, will strap on your favorite watch, Aiden, and that will be the first watch to go on Mars. I could not care less. There's so much that we need to take care of on this world before our limited time runs up. And I mean that both on an individual basis and a collective species oriented fashion as well. Um, we have such limited time on this earth. I wish we focused our efforts and attention um, to take better care of it, to make sure that more people enjoy it, to make sure that more generations enjoy it before we make an escape plan to to Mars. I don't know, man. It's really, again, I was using a strong word when I was saying that I had a certain kind of resentment toward modern Rolex. Um, but I do have a lot of ressentiment towards this fascination um, with space, not exploration per se, but space colonization specifically. And people really get like so masturbatory about this particular topic on Mars that it rubs me off the wrong way. And I'm sure you don't mean it that way, Aiden. Even if you do, whatever. Um, yeah, man, good luck. Good luck on Mars. Make sure that you take all the undesirables with you, um, so we don't have to deal with them on this world anymore. And I hope your watches work. Maybe the hacking seconds will help. Um, Speaking of which, and speaking of Japanese watches, we talked about Seiko. I know a lot of people in the audience love Chrono Tokyo. I know my friend Saint Peter has one of their uh, chronograph watches, the Chronograph 2 specifically, which has been a great hit. But obviously, their name withstanding, um, Chrono actually has made quite a mark with their plain, simplified, beautiful dress watches that focus, that have at their focal center the dial design, the dial color, more than anything else. So there's a new series that they released, which is the Grand Urushi, um, which celebrates their new salon in Aoyama. By the way, if you haven't discovered Chrono Tokyo so far, if you have been living under the rock, so to speak, in the last 2 years, this is basically the diffusion brand of a very important independent Japanese watchmaker, Hajime Asaoka, who makes and still continues to make, by the way, in a very limited number, uh, bespoke watches, made to order watches. He is actually himself a member of the Academy of Independent um, Watchmakers at AHCI. Um, but he wanted to have a line, he wanted to have a brand that actually produces watches under the 3,000 3,500 US dollar mark, right? And he has quite a quite a remarkable range by now. A lot of different dress watches that would make beautiful daily wearers, um, very aesthetically pleasing and vintage inspired chronographs that have his unique design touches. Um, and he also released a number of colorful and very playful 34 millimeter dress pieces that I unfortunately missed out on, but I heard they're coming back. So next time I will be more trigger happy with my purchase. But this time around, he released a three-piece package of the Grand Urushi to celebrate their new Aoyama salon. Um, the three-piece collection is going to be already offered and delivered, i.e., fulfilled in December this month. And the set of three, excluding the VAT, is going for almost 900,000 yen, which is about 6,600 for the whole set. Um, and these watches in February will be sold for about 360,000, so about 26, 2,700 dollars, so under 3,000. They have these beautiful lacquered dials that are very unique. And I just want to read you the particular way they describe it so I don't um, get too inventive or too excited about it, but it's a pretty interesting material. Urushi lacquer is made from the filtered sap of the Japanese Rus vernicifera tree. It is seen as a miraculous substance that cures naturally into a material with remarkable properties. The lacquer absorbs moisture from the air as it hardens, making the lacquered surface perpetually shiny and slick. Over time, urushi will become harder and more scratch resistant as the curing process continues even after the initial manufacture. Suki urushi, or clear lacquer, seals the specific patterns on each dial. Sunlight, specifically UV light, will over time lighten and make it more translucent and warmer or cooler. So there's a promise of a unique patina developing over time with exposure to sunlight, which I think for a modern watch, for a contemporary watch, is a pretty interesting proposition, pretty intriguing for someone like me, at least, even though I really don't like any of these dials. Maybe the one that's like a brown, gray, black. Maybe that can be a thing. But I mean, you have to appreciate it, right? a lot of times we complain about how a lot of brands don't have rich red dials on their watches. I think that's a great example of a rich and a very unique red dial. We used to complain before the green became the new blue that you don't see a lot of interesting green dial watches. But again, this is a very unique kind of an emerald shade of green, not too bright, not too dark that it would almost be mistaken for black for the most part, but just right. So I think all three shades are beautiful. So let's continue. Urushi has been used as a lacquer in Japan for thousands of years. The sap from the lacquered tree is refined and colored with pigments and other ingredients to produce a final work characterized by its beautiful finish and durability. Lacquer trees are 10 to 20 years old when their sap can finally be harvested. I mean, this is becoming more interesting by the minute, right? Because he's using a material that is native to Japanese soil that has been used for centuries by craftsmen, and it is produced and distilled in a process that takes time. And look, I mean, any horological nerd has to be taken by some aspect of this narrative. And I have to say, I'm almost already sold. After the sap is collected, the trees die and new trees are planted by hand. Ah, man. Take my money. Only about 200 grams of sap can be extracted from each tree, making it extremely valuable and increasingly rare. This is even better than the Seiko marketing about the Zaratsu polish, man. It's it's amazing. The subtle and distinctive trait of the urushi is that when it's exposed to natural and UV light, it will turn brighter over time due to moisture loss, which usually takes years. For our Kurono customers, depending on the country you are situated in, the urushi dial will change color, creating a unique piece for each of you. So that's it. Urushi dials have perhaps the highest rejection rate amongst all Kurono watches, if not across the industry. The surface has to be pristine, like the surface of a calm lake in autumn. Man, they're really getting carried away with this marketing copy. Huh? It's almost like prose poetry. The surface has to be pristine, like the surface of a calm lake in autumn. Whew, I'm sweating. Additionally, urushi dials require up to 2 months to dry and prep. Throughout the lengthy process, whether a mistake made during hand painting or even a single retained speck of dust, it will amplify imperfections during the drying process and hence has to be thrown out. Nice. So this is the presentation box for the three-piece set. A special presentation box in Japanese Polonia wood will be prepared for customers that purchase the three-piece set Grand Urushi Ayama. Embellished directly on the wooden cover is the word time in Japanese, Kurono, with the font personally designed by Hajime Asaoka. That's beautiful. And this is the case back. Kurono watches with the Grand designation feature an elevated level of artisanal craftsmanship. I, I'm kind of reminded of this shtick from somewhere else, but let's not, let them be for a second. And is differentiated not only by its innate beauty, but also with the signature case back exclusive to Grand watches, Grand Chrono. That's a very original concept. The focal point of this exclusive case back is Hajime Sensei's signature embellished in bold kanji calligraphy alongside the impression of his one-of-a-kind Hanko stamp. How to purchase? So unlike a lot of their other models, the Grand Urushi Aoyama can only be purchased and collected physically from the Kurono Tokyo Aoyama Salon. There's no online ordering. Customers must have a valid account. You can, however, sign up for one at the Aoyama Salon. You can only purchase either the set of three or one individual watch. Full payment must be made during your order. This is strictly non-refundable, and domestic VAT applies. There is no tourist tax refund. Um, hey, I mean, I like it. I like it. I think they they already sold enough on their website through the limited releases that were tiered also at certain points, right? You know, you had to be a certain kind of customer. If you made a purchase before, you would get priority. If you have an account before, you would get priority. Certain models that they had designed with a female customer in mind, they gave priority to women who wanted to purchase. So they did a lot of those things. I think at this point in time, uh, they deserve to do whatever they want, especially if they want to increase traffic to a new physical location that they have recently established. I think that's absolutely their right. If I lived in Japan or anywhere in Asia, I would certainly go check it out. Um, I really do want to go to Japan, but I'm not sure if I can make it in February. So I guess that's that for my possibility of getting one of these watches. But hey, I think this is a great piece of design. They have released these sorts of watches before. Um, in the Grand Series, they had a lot of pieces that they had released. They also made, I think they also had some urushi pieces before, either in in the classic, no, not in the classic, but perhaps in the special projects, perhaps. No, no, I really feel like, I have seen something with the urushi before on their website, but maybe I'm just confusing myself. But I know that the Grand Series is long-standing, and I'm sure they will continue to sell um, similar watches and similar concepts. So I'm sure they will make their way back into the lineup which they offer online. Um, and why shouldn't they do something special for the local customer? So they have just opened this Kurono Aoyama salon, which looks like a very beautifully designed place, by the way. And they're basically celebrating the opening of that spot with the three-piece sets that they will also sell separately starting in February. All right, I will please hit the like button if you have enjoyed the show so far, if you have learned anything from it. I appreciate you all. I'll take a very short break, get some water in my system, maybe get a drink. I don't know. I doubt it. Um, I'll be right back. All right, we are back. So we talked a little bit about some new watch releases going into 2023. Aiden is asking best watch release 2022, in my opinion. That's actually a long list. I mean, I can approach it from so many different perspectives. I think, something has to be said about the independence, um, of which there are now many that are making a claim to mainstream attention, if not necessarily mainstream accessibility. Um, I have my preferences and I have my own very strong opinions, which may or may not coincide uh, with what is the common sense in the watch industry or in watch journalism. Um, but I can offer a few different takes on that question. What was the best watch release of 2022? I would of course um, encourage super chats for this kind of question, for this kind of request. now that the channel is monetized. Um, but I can certainly start somewhere, even before those super chats come. And if they don't come, that's also fine. I can start maybe by what did not impress me, um, and what I wasn't really taken by. Um, a lot of I'm sorry again. People will misunderstand this. Almost, I'm almost sure of it, because some people already think of me as a Rolex fanboy and think that I have a certain axe to grind against the Swatch Group, and Omega in particular. That could not be further from truth, because I think we wouldn't have um, a Swiss watch industry to speak of if it weren't for the Swatch Group, at least not the industry that we have today, if it weren't for the Swatch Group. But that does not shield them from criticism forever. Um, I think the moon swatch was an insufferable gimmick, and it continues to be. Uh, I don't care how much they have sold of it. Not that I believe the numbers that they release. I don't care how much and how exactly it affected um, their sales of the actual Omega Speedmaster. Um, Once again, I don't believe the numbers they release, anyways. I think it was a very gimmicky move. I think it was a very short-sighted move. Um, I really don't think it will get another generation interested in the Moonwatch. Once again, I understand. I understand the desperation, right? At this point, not only do people not care about the moon landing, the conspiracy theories about moon landing in year 2022, 2023 can't even make it to the top 10 conspiracy theories at this time, right? People care so little about the moon, and I would include myself on that group, that they don't bother even to spin conspiracy theories about, whether it was faked or staged or whatever nonsense they usually come up with. Um, so I understand how desperate they are. I understand how they wanted to make up for lost time, gain the ground they have lost. But I wish they chose something less gimmicky about it. I wish they chose something that was less hype beast oriented, more whiz oriented, more respecting, inclusive, and um, driven by enthusiasts of watches rather than something else. I wasn't impressed by the Moonswatch, which I think is also just a quirky product. For anyone, I find it very hard to believe that people actually like the Moonswatch as much as they profess. I mean, I really don't understand how anyone who is an enthusiast for mechanical watches can actually love that thing. Um, but by all means, you know, you have your taste, I have mine. That's great. That's one thing I absolutely didn't like about 2022. I absolutely didn't like the way that Omega tried to um, piss on everybody's party by making a bunch of derivative releases right on the eve of Watches and Wonders. Um, I think the colorful Aquaterras they released were very derivative. Again, I cannot claim that Rolex or any other brand um, has exclusive ownership of any particular dial color. But when you have an entire spread of releases that seem to be replicating um, a lot of what Rolex already has in their catalog, and a lot of uh, and if those models happen to be some of the most desirable, some of the most demanded Rolex watches, um, you're setting up yourself to be perceived a certain way, and people made no mistake about that. Um, the colorful Aquaterras, the green dial, yellow gold Omega Speedmaster. Um, it was just sending the wrong signals. And again, for a brand like Omega, which for decades had so much riding on how how different they were from their crosstown rivals, so to speak, right? I'm talking about Rolex, since both brands originated in Biel, right? That bilingual Swiss town. I made a little video about this a little while ago. Um, it's one of the early videos of this channel, so I'll just go ahead and share it. Um, it's so early that I hadn't even paid for StreamYard at the time, and it still has a StreamYard watermark on the upper right corner. So it's for me that was the most disappointing um, moves and releases of the year. Um, Omega's early releases for 2022 in the run up to Watches and Wonders, um, and Omega's special uh, collaboratory uh, project with the Swatch Group, which turned out to be just a quartz and plastic version of um, of the Speedmaster, which was very disappointing. And that's what I'm also afraid of, by the way, when it comes to um, the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms, right? Blancpain was already pumping up uh, fans like me uh, early in December, saying like, we have something very special coming up in in 2023, and I want to show you some of these things that they have done there. And they have just released a version of the 50 Fathoms, which I think, is, again, it's adorable. It's very cute. But I hope that's not what they're gonna serve us for um, for the 70th anniversary. I mean, maybe you have seen it already, right? The 70th, sorry, the Valentine's Day piece that Blancpain just realized. So a few days ago, it was even November. right? It was even before we entered the month of December. Uh, they made this uh, tribute for the 50 Fathoms. In 2023, Blancpain will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms, right? The first modern diver's watch, which is an absolute fact. It predates the Rolex Submariner. It is the pioneer. It's Jean-Jacques Fichter, who was the Blancpain CEO at the time and who was himself um, very passionate and very committed to diving, to scuba diving in particular, and who had responded at the time to the requests of um, the French Marine Corps to make for them serious, utilitarian, waterproof, and legible diver watches, and that's the legacy, and that's a legacy that ever so slightly predates the Rolex Submariner, which seems to have taken a lot of inspiration from the original. Um, and I think they have just released this special edition, or rather, they're releasing a 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe Valentine's Day, which again, it's a cutesy piece. It's kind of beautiful in its own way, but I hope this is not what they are um, what they are gonna give us for the 70th anniversary of the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. I mean, save for the heart-shaped heart-shaped accented centrally deployed seconds, I think this is actually kind of a cute piece, very feminine, very elegant, very beautiful, and not so tacky at all. Again, save for that heart-shaped loom on the central deployed seconds. Um, but again, I hope this is not the only thing they are giving us for the 70th um, anniversary. Apparently, this is a model that they are going to release for Valentine's Day. Um, it's not April yet, so I'm sure this is not an April Fool's joke. Um, but yeah, I mean, if they use the 70th year of 50 Fathoms to release this and maybe a Swatch version of the 50 Fathoms, I think I'm just about done with Swatch Group. Um, it's I might start boycotting them or something. I mean, I'm just joking, but it's I think really for for the 17 different watch companies they own in a range that gives you anything from Tissot and Certina on the one end, Blancpain and Breguet on the other, and anything in between, right? Longines, Hamilton, Omega. Um, I mean, it's they have 17 different brands, right? I don't always come up with everyone, but you can help me count if you want. Um, so what did we say already? Breguet, Blancpain, Omega, Tissot, Longines, um, Certina, Swatch, of course, Harry Winston, Glashütte Original, Jacques Dro. What else? I think Mido is theirs as well. Mido is theirs. Not sure if Rado is theirs. I really don't know. That's as many as I can remember. But anyways, they have I think 17 different horological brands. And I mean, I know a lot of these brands have their own sort of autonomy within the umbrella, within the network, and they have their own set of executives and whatever else. But frankly, man, I mean, it's like they're not doing right by the legacy that they're sitting on, by the importance of all these brands that they already um, have fed off for decades already. Maybe it's time to let some of them go. I mean, Harry Winston's watch division hasn't done anything exciting for years now, maybe for almost a decade. Um, the most exciting thing that they let Blancpain do recently was to make the caliber for the Speedmaster Chronochime. And what is going on with Breguet, right? You know, where is the Type 20 has been completely eliminated from the lineup already 2 years ago. The Aéronaval, which is the one, which is the classic one without the date even, uh, and the one I have, um, that has been gone since 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And what are they doing with that? Right? Are they going to eliminate the whole type 20, type 21, type 22 range? Are they focusing on something else, something new for a Breguet sports watch in stainless steel, which has been actually quite an interesting category for the brand? Or do they just want to eliminate a lot of those things and simply focus on Breguet as a more boutique, high horological brand? I mean, I would understand that, but I would also appreciate some clarity about that position. And honestly, again, why would they do that? Is that what they are basically doing passively by not doing anything with the Type 20? Do they think that would impinge upon Omega's territory, that would impinge upon um, Blancpain's territory, that they would rather use those two brands than Breguet? Then why have Breguet? Why not release it? Why not sell it to someone who can make something out of it? Same thing with Blancpain, right? Blancpain, the way it was revived by uh, Biver and Piguet was to rest on that fact that it was the oldest Swiss manufacturer, even though it had many hiatuses in its production that uh, that had interrupted its life. So it was not perhaps um, the longest continuously operating manufacturer like Vacheron Constantin is, for example. But Blancpain, having been founded in 1735, was the oldest manufacturer. So when Jean-Claude Biver and Piguet were actually reviving the brand, one of the slogans that they had was we haven't made a quartz watch and we never will, right? And they built an entire new legacy of making complicated watches that would rival, in fact, uh, Patek Philippe, that would also rival, in a certain sense, IWC, which had towards mid to late 80s itself redefined its image around this idea of democratizing complications, right? Making complicated watches um, available to a larger variety of people. Um, that was Blancpain. So you have that in Blancpain, which um, you're not doing much with. Uh, that's the Swatch Group. You have Breguet that has, again, a very strong legacy in um, in the aesthetics of a complicated watch dial, especially asymmetric dials that have been definitive to the iconography of um, of today's independent brands. Right, there is uh, among a lot of the boutique high horological creations, there's hardly a brand that does not take something from how Abraham Louis Breguet used to make pocket watches in the 19th century, how George Daniels um, basically canonized that style in his book, The Art of Breguet, how Daniel Roth and Michel Parmigiani rebuilt that brand under the patronage of the Chomet brothers uh, in the 70s and the 80s to a certain extent, in reimagining the Breguet style um, as a modern wristwatch. And today, you know, we don't, we just don't get to appreciate Breguet in the same way, not in the way that it has been such an inspiration to generations of watchmakers, especially independently minded and creative watchmakers. We don't get to appreciate Breguet in the way that they have made some specific kinds of instruments and tool-oriented watches, whether we are talking about the marine chronometers that Breguet himself built for the Royal French Navy, or the pilot's chronographs that Breguet participated in making for the air forces of the French Navy in the Type 20 in mid 20th century, or some choice dive watches that Breguet even made for both the military and civilians, again in the 60s and in some other time periods. We don't get to appreciate any aspect of this heritage because um, the Swatch Group has other priorities, right? Between the 17 brands they don't have room, they don't have time for every single brand to thrive and every single brand to have the wiggle room to go wherever they might want. Um, it's kind of a shame. But then again, these brands have so much in their archives. There's so many great finds among their discontinued models, among their neo vintage models, like 90s complicated Blancpain watches. Still a great value proposition. Um, Breguet chronographs, moon phases from a certain vintage. They are, relatively speaking, um, cheap. So I guess I shouldn't complain too much. I shouldn't wake up too many people because at the end of the day, um, what they don't know really cannot hurt them. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's gotta it's gotta yeah, it's gotta give. It's gotta give at some point. I don't see why. I don't see how they can continue. Um, let's shift gears. I'll turn to another all white watch. Revolution has been very much focused on collaborations these days. I mean, they have already opened an arm that they call Grail Watch, in which they undertake what they call, more ambitious collaborative projects. Uh, but beyond that, I think in the last few months, Revolution probably released between 4 to 6 different collaborative watches in limited editions, um, with varying success. Right, I'm sure they have all sold out, but they were also limited editions of different kinds. Some were really genuinely a few dozens. Some were just hundreds. Others were, 250 or more. I think this is an interesting piece. Unimatic has been a brand that I've been watching pretty closely since the summer, I have to say. Um, I have genuinely come across them and started looking at them maybe in the spring, but it was only when I was preparing a live stream to focus on alternatives to Seiko, basically under 1,000 grand, that I paid real attention to Unimatic and really looked into what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve in terms of design, and what really goes on under the hood, so to speak. And we have a brand that basically rests on this mystique of Italian design, um, made in Italy, so to speak. That can mean any number of things. But ultimately, in this case, what it means is that you have a merging of Italian design and Swiss mechanical technology, right? So at the end of the day, you have um, watches that are designed in Italy uh, and movements, calibers that are made by Celita, which of course has been now reliably producing clones of ETA slash Valjoux movements for quite some time. So this is a Kohler GMT piece that Unimatic and Revolution and the Rake produced very recently on their Modello Uno, which they call an Arctic Fox because of its all white appearance. Right, this is their regular Modello Uno, which is more which has more the appearance of a traditional dive watch in an emphatically um, minimalistic aesthetics, right? No dates, no graduation on the bezel, just pure, um, simple, no nonsense design, which I think is a great base for this sort of watch. They also have chronographs, which is their Modello 3. Um, and you would remember that I just shared with you the two bronze divers that they produced in collaboration with Masena Lab. So Unimatic itself um, has thrived in the recent past from these collaborational projects that they have made with a number of different brands. You know, Masena Lab, they had a collaboration with Hodinkee before, Revolution, and many others. Um, so this is something I think they came up with. What is it? Hundreds. Uh, okay, so apparently it's coming up on the 28th, 9 a.m. Eastern time. It will be 6 a.m. for those of us who are on the West Coast. Um, Apparently, it has these three different straps, comes in this sort of tactical design box, 150 pieces, and they're priced at $1,500. And the movement is an ETA 2893-2 with a 42-hour power reserve. The cases are 41.5 millimeters stainless steel with white Cerakote, and they're water resistant up to 300 millimeters. And comes with these three different straps. Again, I think it's a little overpriced, um, especially again the Seiko 5 Sports GMT providing such an interesting value proposition with this particular caliber, no pun intended, of GMT watches, right, which have uh, an independently adjustable 24-hour hand, but which don't necessarily have um, an independently adjusting, jumping local hour hand, so to speak. Um, but I mean, it's a pretty nifty watch if you are. A lot of times when um, you know, cross the threshold of $1,000, I think you start really paying for design, paying for branding, more than anything else at any rate. Um, so perhaps that makes a little sense when it comes to that. If you are really taken by this particular design, you might think it is justified to pay, 1,500. Um, I think again, I think it's a little too much for the kind of watch that we have here in front of us, and that's been basically the main criticism to a lot of the more recent Revolution limited editions, whether it was the Frank Müller revival chronograph uh, that Way came up with in the Grail Watch project, or the or these kinds of watches where you have collaborations with Unimatic, with Nevada Grantion, with Angelus, um, and where you have watches that basically, um, you know, suddenly have uh, a valuation that seems out of all proportion for what they have to offer horologically. Um, Again, some of these uh, are more reasonable, others less so. I mean, the Nevada Grantion Depth Master, for example, was relatively um, reasonable, priced right under 1,000. If you're into the aesthetics, that's an interesting proposition for a blackout watch, uh, a diver watch especially. Um, but when you looked at the Angelus and Revolution chronodate, Angelus' share, $24,000 for that watch. I don't know. I don't know what universe that makes sense in. Um, but then again, I was not impressed by Angelus or Angelus as a brand. Um, the Jacques Bianchi was an interesting collaboration. Um, I thought uh, that was a decent pricing for right around 1100s, and that sold out almost instantly. I think that was about maybe 100 pieces or so. I think that was a very successful collaboration. um, because it's a very unique design. It's a very, very handsome looking watch, very no nonsense diver. You have a scuba diver, who is wearing the same watch, basically drawn on the um, on the dial, um, and itself also loomed, which remains the only gimmick of the watch. But hey, I mean, otherwise, it would be just another dive watch. So I don't mind have um, that they have done something like that, which remains true to form, of course, which remains to the original diver watches that Jacques Bianchi has designed, except, of course, um, those divers at the center of the dial were not actually uh, loomed uh, for the original. This is another piece that I really like in terms of design, in terms of the utilitarian approach to executing a diver's watch. The case shape is somewhere between a cushion shape and a traditional robust diver's watch in terms of its contours. Um, Again, the crown is flipped over to the other flank of the case, which is a similar trick to what Seiko does with its divers watches, in shifting the crown to 4 o'clock rather than 3, ultimately it's about not having um, an oversized crown protruding on your wrist. Um, so left-hand drive, when it comes to divers watches, has that sort of practical um, reason to begin with. So that was a collaboration that I really liked, and it sold out pretty quickly. I think that's a testament to its success at any rate. Um, this again, I think the Tonda PF micro rotor is a very interesting take on the whole genre. I think there are a lot of things about it that are very elegant, that are very interesting, that are very elevated. I actually love how the bracelet integrates and wears when it comes to this watch. Um, I love the guilloche dial and a particular design. And look, I mean, I've complained a lot about a lot of these brands not doing anything new, but reiterating the same models with different dial colors. Um, so you might think it's hypocritical for me to um, rave over this particular release, but I think this was just a brilliant fit for this particular watch, and it didn't take for this one to be sold um, out at all, and they didn't really offer it with a huge premium or something. It's basically priced around the same amount as any other uh, Parmigiano Fleurier Tonda PF micro rotor. Um, I think that was an interesting collaboration, and certainly worthy of some attention that it received, and that's something that happened earlier this year as well. Let me take a quick break. Right. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Delivery needed to be taken care of. All right, so let's get back to watches. We talked about. Hey Nick, how are you doing, man? Feel free to jump on if you like. We talked about Seiko's two releases for its 110th anniversary in watchmaking. Um, of course, that was the SPB 333, which is a diver's watch that has a similar dial to the White Birch, beautiful piece, and also a recreation of the Laurel, which was their first wristwatch in 1913 with a gorgeous enamel dial with stylized Arabic numerals that we came to recognize as Breguet numerals. A very elegant piece as well, both priced right around 1300 or so, which I think is again, um, you know, quite reasonable with how much they have uh, they have become. Um, oh, no worries, guys. It's okay. Watch Nicholas does his own thing. I do my own thing. Um, we sometimes overlap, sometimes we don't. God knows I know nothing about air fryers, and I wouldn't be able to tell you anything, teach you anything. Um, I'm not even sure if I'm interested, honestly. I know they were all the rage during the quarantine, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of frying, honestly. So I like French fries. I don't know about anything else. I just had ramen earlier today, right before the live stream, actually, and I usually put a lot of chili sauce in it, so it kind of uh, cleared off a lot of my congestion. So it was amazing. It's bomb for the vegetables. All right. Well, I mean, maybe I should try. Honestly, Ozzy, I should try it with someone who already has it. So I eat it. I've never eaten anything that's air fried. So for me, it's a little too far of a step to take all of a sudden to get my own air fryer. Oh, thank you. OG baby girl, $10. Thank you so much. Can't stay. I had to sneak on here real quick. Have a house full of guests. Lucky you. Have a great new year. You too. And happy holidays. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. But yeah, you got to tell me more, Ozzy. And again, I don't have, um, I haven't even tried anything that was made in an air fryer. So again, it's too far, too big of a step for me to take. But yes, so we talked about the two 110th anniversary Seiko releases that are coming out in January 2023. This particular creation of their first wristwatch in the Laurel SPB 359 with the white enamel dial, power reserve indicator at 9, pointer dates on a subdial at 6, and a centrally deployed seconds. Um, I think it has great, vintage inspired, conversion implied aesthetics with that oversized onion crown. Great piece with a hand wound movement. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have basically the new Save the Ocean. Let's see where it is. You basically have the new Save the Ocean, which is SPB 333, which has this great monochromatic look and a dial pattern that looks very much like Seiko's white birch. And again, very monochromatic, except for the blue centrally deployed seconds, a rather discrete date display launched between 4 and 5 o'clock. Quite a nice piece. And then, and this is 5,000 pieces, by the way, has a lovely self-winding caliber that has around 70 hours of power reserve. And the other one was about 40 at full charge. So a great two-piece for the celebration of 110th anniversary by Seiko. And we attended quickly to this three-piece set that Chrono Tokyo by Hajime Asaoka released for celebrating the opening of their first physical store, their first salon in Tokyo's Aoyama district. Dials that are made after the tradition of urushi, lacquer dials that have very unique properties and properties that open them up to take on certain kinds of patina over the years by taking on exposure to sunlight and UV light. So very, very beautiful already, but also very intriguing for anyone who is interested in vintage watches and in watches that take on this sort of character over the years. I would highly recommend that you read up on them on Chrono Tokyo's website. We have done some of that earlier in this show because the process of producing these dials is itself quite interesting, quite intriguing, if you ask me. For better or worse, I think this is a great way for them to celebrate actually having a physical location because they have done all their sales through their website so far. Um, these will be exclusively sold in that boutique they have just opened in Aoyama, Tokyo. So if you are buying you still have to have an account with them on their website. But if you are buying the box set, the three-piece set, I think you can already have your order fulfilled before the end of the year, or as soon as possible if they have not sold out. If you are going to buy them one by one, you can do that, I think, starting in February. And I think ultimately, for the kind of product they're presenting, and I made fun of this, but again, no harm, no foul, right? I just thought it was funny that they also have a line that is called Grand, to indicate that these are their watches that have a higher level finishing and that represent a more artisanal kind of craftsmanship. I thought that was a little ironic because of how we criticize sometimes Seiko for not having established that sort of distinction between Seiko and Grand Seiko. And in this case, you have Chrono and Grand Chrono. And then, of course, you have Hajime Asoka, who actually makes bespoke watches that you order on a personal basis and that you customize and that you wait years and years for and pay quite a handsome sum for. So as if there weren't, there wasn't enough confusion already. But apparently, again, these models belong to that Grand line. That's why they are called Grand Urushi Aoyama, which is the name of the neighborhood where the boutique is located, where the salon is located. And they will be only available for purchase there. I think the price for the entire set is about, 6,500 US dollars plus VAT. And the pieces separately are around 2,300 plus VAT, plus minus $100, let's say. Yeah, and that was the other two watches that we presented, and then I talked a little bit about new releases, but honestly, it was more new releases of 2022, and that was more in the vein of what did I not appreciate in 2022. And I may have said a few things about the Swatch Group, which I'm not going to walk back or repeat, but I was mostly expressing my frustrations about what I did not like about new releases of 2022. If someone else jumps on the panel, I'm happy to discuss some of my favorite releases. If someone wants to ask more specific questions about what I actually enjoyed, what was, in fact, my favorite release of 2022, I would be more than happy to oblige and to answer that. But I think I have a guest already. JB.
Anybody here?
Hey, man.
If I could just have a guest.
You
Hey,
have.
what's going on?
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm good.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. So I got a. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, perfectly.
I got a couple of things to show. This is since we're just 1 week away, and I'm a little bit of an autograph collector too. This is a Lionel Messi
Nice.
boot. This will probably be his last World Cup, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure he's going to give it a shot, but I think realistically, yes.
And also the last World Cup for the GOAT, number 2.
Well,
they're both GOATs. I guess Messi has probably got the edge, but I mean, they're both living legends.
Yeah, I love them both. Honestly, again, I'm a bigger fan of Ronaldo than Messi, but on paper, you got to give it to the guy. I mean, he has now literally won everything. So,
yeah. And if they didn't win it this year, you kind of look back on his career and say, "Man, he was probably the best player that didn't win a World Cup."
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the sympathetic take, right? You know, the haters would have said, but he didn't win the World Cup. So I'm glad that's not the excuse anymore, right?
Exactly.
Um,
And one of the things that you see with him, I mean, just incredible balance. And you see, Maradona and Messi, not only the ball skills, the foot skills of it, but to be able to find some of those lanes, to be able to find some of those runs that he can make, and the balance. I was my son plays soccer, and he thought it was cool to go down on his knees. And I started putting on Messi highlights. I said, listen, just show him how you can weave through there. You got to just get through there. If you can get past him and get control of the ball, you get a step on him. But he was a master at that. I mean, just an incredible player.
well, he still is.
I know.
You know,
he
showed that against Guardiol in in the semifinal game against Croatia, right? You know, in that assist.
Yeah.
Again, I'm all for it, right? You know, when we talk about goats, to me that's an interesting conversation because it inspires people to really focus on, really home in on what makes a player great. And sometimes you have to go beyond statistics and what's on paper, and that conversation for me becomes exciting. But ultimately, I'm more on the side of people who say maybe we have to judge everyone by their accomplishments specific to the era, right? If you have watched that Maradona documentary, I mean, they were kicking this guy from pillar to post. You know, the fields at that time were not as well kept, as well groomed,
right.
As they are now. So the facilities were at a very different level and at a much lower level. Same thing with Pele. You know, the kind of
you still have to feel that your nation's best 10 players, right? And so some of those guys can play. And if you got a superstar like Maradona, and the other thing I would say about, when I lifted up the Ronaldo jersey and said GOAT, there's only some people that are going to be able to do the bicycle kick and pull that off. And if you see like some like the wax museums where you see actually how high he's getting on, his highest header, where it's 12 feet, and you can put that next to an NBA superstar and realize that what he's doing is just world class. I mean, there's only a few human beings that can do that.
Right.
And for that reason, he makes 30 million a year.
Right. Honestly, I mean, I always used to say this. Now it will sound like an excuse, but I always thought that Ronaldo was more of a complete athlete, whereas Messi was just a better footballer in a way.
Yep.
I mean, it's like not that Ronaldo is not innately talented, but Messi with the ball is just something very special, almost otherworldly.
I've got one more since we're still talking soccer. I thought this was just going to be a quick thing, but there's one more that I think you're going to get excited about. Hang on.
Of course. But yeah, they have, and that talent has a lot to do with a particular kind of intelligence too, which you have hinted at, JB, both in the case of Maradona and Messi. The way they visualize the field, the way they can see things. Oh yeah. Except that's a Milan jersey, of course. That's quite late in his career and past this maybe a little bit. But hey, it's still better.
Still keep collecting those checks.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Ronaldinho was, again. It's a kind of very special talent. I mean, there's that video of him trying on his new kicks from Nike or something, and he keeps hitting the crossbar with the ball. Do you know that video?
Exactly. Yep.
It's just like, that
But he was dazzling and for years. I mean, he was probably one of the top players. For him and Kaká at one time were probably the two best Brazilians that were playing, and the most dynamic players for probably the better part of 5 years when they were both in their prime.
Yeah, and which again, turns us back to why we appreciate so much Messi and Ronaldo, because for them the consistency and the longevity was just different.
Yeah,
because Maradona showed us something again extraterrestrial for 2-3 years, or in 2-3 different tournaments. Ronaldinho or Kaká showed us 3 to 5 years of incredible primes. Zidane showed us some kind of consistency, but like he was the definition of a clutch player on the soccer field until he wasn't, until he completely failed himself and his team in 2006 in his very last game in the final.
Italy took that one.
Yeah, but then again, with Messi, you didn't have that. He was pretty consistent for about 15 years. With Ronaldo, you may say maybe this year he has fallen off, but even last year, he was carrying that Manchester United on his shoulders for an entire season.
Yeah, you got a point. But if you just think of the longevity of the career, I mean, he's made 4 World Cup national teams after being, a childhood with kind of some growth problems. It says something. If you think about the American that has been on the team the longest, maybe Alexi Lawless and Landon Donovan were on 3.
Right. And with all due respect, again, not that I have anything against United States of America, but it's one thing to make the American soccer team 2-3 times for major tournaments. It's another thing to play for Argentina for 4 different World Cups. So
you see some of the Portugal midfield that was so nice to see, in the last 10 years, where they've made several teams like Silva, just some of the guys that can set the tone of the game and control the middle of the field with experience. If you can get a couple of those guys, I think it makes a difference. They can get the ball to the playmakers. But yeah, you guys were talking 2022 watches. So
yeah,
when I think 2022 Rolex, I think that humongous 50 millimeter watch that just came out, and the left-hand drive.
I mean, look, I was talking about it in a pretty slanted way. So I was just I was mostly talking about things that I didn't like, not necessarily because they weren't commercially successful. I mean, by all accounts, they sold a lot of moon swatches, for example, but that was my absolute least favorite thing that has happened in the world of watches the entire year.
But the innovation is to flip the sides of a GMT.
Right. For Rolex, I didn't even mention, because I wanted to. Other than that, I wanted to focus on positives, because Rolex has been a whole slew of disappointments as well in terms of releases, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, they still have the most incredible stuff, but you're not getting a lot of new stuff. They're still right down the middle.
Actually, I mean, I do this. If you are being sarcastic with the Deep Sea Challenge, I actually completely disagree. I think Deep Sea Challenge is actually a decent release, precisely because it's it's a commemorative model. Really, it's on the 10th anniversary of the actual Deep Sea Challenge. Basically, a 1-to-1 reproduction of the watch that was used in that particular event. And honestly, Rolex could have willy-nilly, for no particular reason whatsoever, introduced titanium into its lineup, and people would have lapped it up. But they actually used it for this watch which desperately needed it, if you ask me. I mean, otherwise, imagine that watch in stainless steel, or God forbid, white gold or something.
So I'm not real versed on like the whole diving on how deep you can actually go, but is there actually an application for a 50 millimeter watch where like your body can actually absorb that much pressure? I mean, if the watch can do this, it's made out of these.
The watch was actually strapped on the vessel in that mission. It wasn't on James Cameron's wrist. It was on the what do you
But you're
call
buying it for your wrist. This is why $50,000 doesn't make sense to me for a 50 millimeter watch.
It does not. I mean, for me, $500 for a 50 millimeter watch doesn't make sense either. But
it's a cool concept that you can actually have the technology to go that deep, and that should you ever want to know the time and you're that deep, and you may want to know the time when you're that deep, right? What if your radio signals go down?
Honestly, to me, it's a watch that's to be look. Let me put it this way: you gave me a great present this earlier this year in 2022, a signed jersey, right? Is that jersey something that I should wear to a pickup soccer game or frame and hang on my wall?
I hope you hang it somewhere where you like it. You know, you can have a room one day.
That's it. That's it.
It's not. So, hey, as he wins championships, that's not going to lose value.
No. That's what I mean. So at the end of the day, to me, the Deep Sea Challenge is not actually a watch that you should be wearing on your wrist anyways. It's a watch, for the special kind of collector who can really put it in a glass case and bring out, when he's geeking out with his buddies or other watch friends to show off. I mean, it's really an exhibition piece. It's almost a concept watch, that can be worn, but it's really a stretch.
Yeah. So what's on your wrist tonight?
Oh, it's since it's Speedy Tuesday, I wore my Lemania. So it's basically the base of the caliber.
Oh yeah.
Or the Moonwatch for the Omega 321.
Manual wind?
Yes, sir.
I love those pushers.
Yeah. I don't know if the...
Yep, you can hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Very, very small.
There's something to say about the feeling of when you wind it and just barely let go of it. As you let go of it, it kind of just escapes from your fingertips in this nice, pleasurable way on a manual wind. And as it kind of snaps back, you said, ah. And as you turn it again.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said. I'm wearing a manual wind as well.
Yeah.
The Navitimer.
Yes, sir. 7806, right?
7806, and here I'll take it off. With the twin jets, right? So you see a lot of the modern ones after the mid 70s would have the jets that were behind it. Sorry, I'll get it focused here before long. I was the world worst at this.
It's okay.
Yeah, let me probably get there. It is.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually my favorite Breitling logo, the twin jets.
You can see I have the chrono going. So a couple other things that are like, I guess, satisfying on a chrono is when you stop it, and I'll do it in front of the camera. So you'll stop it here. And the satisfying feeling when you hit just the reset, watch all the subdials that are right in here. All at one time, just wham, and they circle back. And you only get that in a chrono. I know that like the GMT is nice because 2 time zones, but there's something to say about just how it all crunches back.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's it's like the original fidget spinner in a way.
It is. But and you don't really have to worry about it. Like the manual wind is kind of nice because it gives you a chance to kind of, I would say, touch it. But let me see if you can hear. No.
I think
Yeah.
you're too close to the microphone. We can hear it, but mostly
It's probably not as loud as yours.
that's better.
But for a watch that's 50 years old, it's still got a nice little
Yeah.
feel to it. So that, yeah, 1972 7806 Breitling Navitimer.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Those are absolute classics. You know, the only thing that keeps me a tiny bit away is my irrational hatred of date displays. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
If you get the model just before this one, 71 maybe or 70, don't quote me on this, but before the 1972 version, they had no date. So that was actually a feature, not a bug.
well, I know, but 806, that's the reference number of the watches that you're
Okay.
talking about. That's my preference, and those have the other thing that I really like about yours is that it has the big eyes, right?
Big eyes.
The oversized chronograph registers. So for me, the perfection is the 806s with big eyes, the Venus 178 movement, which does not have the date display. Yeah. That to me is perfection when it comes to Navitimers. But
and we can just go ahead and give the young Brando tip out. These are less than 5,000 right now for it. Right. And so, you know, they make the newer ones, but I mean, you're talking about a Valjoux movement that everyone can work on, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, every watchmaker worth their salt should be able to work on it for sure. Look again,
a chronograph from the company that kind of brought forward the chronograph from 1912 forward.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting too because you see this in, you know, the 70s with like the Pan Am pilots and, you know, the airline industry kind of booming and pilots wearing these watches and associating a lot of the kind of the horological or the marketing toward pilots, and they wore them. And then early 90s and like I would say up to maybe 2002, there were some Breitlings that were just the bee's knees. The Super Ocean. I mean, they were just too cool as far as style. And you can see in the last 5 years, Breitling is cracking into the top 10 in sales.
They just had also, I mean, as a result of their financial success, they just had some recalibration at the top, some reconfiguration in terms of who has the larger stake. We'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in a later episode, but they have been doing well. They have been doing quite well in the since Georges Kern came at the helm. I think they have been financially, business-wise, sales-wise, doing very well indeed.
Yeah. And if I think back as well, another brand that I would feel is upward trajectory is the Cartier brand. I mean, they've got the classic tank, but the Santos that are coming out, some of the blues, I don't know. I know you're not a huge fan of the skeleton, but I'm a huge fan of the black Santos in PVD, and I've been waiting for that watch to fall to a certain level, and I'm a buyer, but they seem to, you know, be staying at like about 80% of retail.
Look, I mean, it's here's the thing with Cartier. Of course, I think in a certain sense and on a certain level, I think Cartier has been making, you know, very timeless and beautiful things, and certain people have been buying them and buying their watches since, pardon me, since the 60s. On the other hand, um, I think they have finally caught the attention of a different kind of customer and started dipping into the mainstream consciousness again, um, as a maker of watches as well. And I think that has been very much thanks to the fact that they started paying attention to what distinguished them, right? That they don't focus anymore on um, super complications necessarily. They focus on things that are beautiful, visually captivating, practical in a certain sense, right? The quick exchange straps and bracelets,
Yep.
different kinds of materials that could appeal to younger people, and that kind of shift the consciousness of the brand from simply being understood as jewelry, even though there's a lot of room for that for the customer who just wants something beautiful on their wrist that also happens to show time, you
Yep.
know, which I
And
think the
to me,
Santa.
that's what the Black Santos is. To me, that is exactly what it is. If I have a black jacket on and I want a PVD, a hard surface that's on the outside, you've got an iconic design that is the opposite of everywhere that it would be white is dark now, and all of those are lit up. And so to me, I know it may not be your taste, but they do come with two straps. But I'm not a buyer at 8,000. I'm sorry, I'm not. You can get better stuff for 8,000,
Well, I mean,
and that's the retail price.
it is what it is, man. I mean, it's again, a lot of times we make up our mind about a certain kind of watch, certain kind of model, and how much it should be priced. And I completely understand when you say that. I mean, for me, I come sometimes this close to pulling the trigger on certain watches. Um,
Right here,
like, yeah, this one, this one.
5,000. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so I completely understand, that if you say this were 5,000 and I'm pulling the trigger, but I would not right now, I understand. I have watches like that in my mind that I would not uh, buy at a certain point, but once they drop down,
Yep.
I do.
And the blue, where they have just the outside of it. Yeah. Both times that I kind of thought. So let's zoom in a little bit. This probably doesn't show it on this one. If you can zoom in on this, here's really the reason why I didn't kind of impulse buy this. This picture doesn't actually do it justice. But if you look on this model, inside square it actually looks like a waterfall kind of brushing where it's there's lines that go down. This is not even an accurate picture of it. But if you go to like Chrono 24, you'll see it's a waterfall, and every time that I looked down on it, it just looked in the way to me. And so if you get the white dial with the blue outer or the silver on the outer, the background in that inner square is a solid color. And I like that better, but I like the color black better. So it kind of just bummed me out that there was a little bit of texture to it. It's not ugly texture. It's just I wish it was like as black as this inner circle. And it's not. It really isn't. I've looked at it like up close, and I wanted it to be a black hole right there. Just the darkest of the dark that you can find. And it isn't. Maybe we could.
You want me to pull up something on Chrono 24?
You don't have to. I was just making the point. Is I was really close to buying this for 8,000.
Let's see.
Know
How Should I use the model number, or do you usually have a keyword for this part?
It's the WSA 0039. See us the reference in the bottom right.
Ah, okay. Let me see if I can find a listing with.
So you get these quick disconnect. You see the little pop there at the back of that on the Cardia on the top right picture. You could just pop it off. But if you zoom into one of these, all right, the one on the right probably is the best one. You can see what I'm talking about from the last page.
Let me see. This one?
Right there. Yep. So look at that texture right there. You see that in the middle? Doesn't that look like a cat scratched that?
So you don't like the fact that they have two different kinds of finishing on the dial at the center?
Not at all. I want it to be like a black hole there. I want it to be the black, the black is the black of my Daytona.
And
if you look at any other color beside the black, they don't have that kind of texture on it.
The thing is, I do actually like this sort of finish on the dial, but I would have liked it to be uniform, like you said. So either all mattes, or it should be brushed grain the whole way, including the hour track. I mean, okay, let me show you what I mean on a watch in a similar genre, basically, which is the Octofinissimo, right? And their titanium model, for example, has that sort of brushed finish all over the place, right? It's it's basically.
I tried this one on at the airport about a week ago.
Wait, this is not this one.
Yep.
This one, right? The steel version actually has that brushed, satin brushed dial, satin brushed surfaces, which are contrasted by mirror polished, right? So it has a kind of uniformity in the contrast of those brushed and polished surfaces.
For sure. And it does set it off a little bit. It'll catch the light from distance a little bit more. And so you see it from where you look from your eyes to your wrist, but no one else would see it.
Right. So I appreciate that. I like that.
Yeah, this is a fun watch.
It's something different, which is what I appreciate. And again,
yeah. And if you look at the white version of this, if you just put in like Santos, the white version of this, you'll see that it's solid, So that kind of draws me to the stainless one with the blue bezel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of any type of gold here. Yeah.
This is with the blue dial too, though, right?
Yep. So they have one like this that has the texture in the center, and the bezel now has those marks as well. We call this one the Ryan Garcia.
Right, because he was wearing one right on the poker table. And then they have this one with just the blue bezel.
I would say my second favorite there. And those come with what, 3 straps there?
Right.
With the quick disconnect on the back. What are those going for?
I just randomly clicked this, so I don't know if this is representative of the market, but 7250 is.
Seems fair.
What's the list price on this?
It's got to be close. I don't think that the other the skeletons are going, I think, retail like 26,000, somewhere around there.
Oh wow.
And the black one with PVD, which is supposedly the hardest structure, is more than the stainless or the one that's in blue, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah,
the
6800. Yeah.
medium one, yeah. And then the large ones are about 78.
I went to the AD today to get a link put in my watch that I got, the one that I ordered. It was just a little too tight.
Can you hold the ground for me for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'll tell the story.
Please.
Yeah, so I went to the AD today to get. I bought a watch on auction that was a 5-digit Rolex Daytona with the white dial, and it was the right size technically, but it would be better if I added a link. So there's 13 links that all Rolexes come with on the Oyster, and this one was at 11 on the longest setting. So if you look at like the mini settings on the bracelet, there's basically 5 places that the pin can sit, 4 or 5 places. But the distance between the first one and the last one is equal to exactly 1 link. So if you add a link, then you've got basically, the center point. It was just a little bit too tight with 11 links. So, and I think I'm a little bit more than 7 inches. So, I walk in, you got to ring the doorbell, and there's a off-duty police that's there. Apparently, it's $4,000 to get a policeman. You can even have one like at your house, $4,000 a day. Anyway, he's there playing his favorite game of Tetris, but he gives you a good look over. And what was nice to see inside the AD today is people who were with their significant other. I guess both of them maybe were off of work. You had the guy that's saying, "Sell me this Rolex because my wife's here and she's going to have the baby within the next 2 hours, probably." I'm not joking with you. If this woman probably was shown the right Daytona, I think we may have seen a baby head right inside the Rolex dealership right there. And I'm not kidding. This lady like this. And I was thinking that may be the best prop that has ever come. I mean, you say, listen, I need to buy this watch. It's going to be for my son. I need this Pepsi right now. And she was there. She knew her role, and he was saying, can you do it? And you had this other young couple that must have just get engaged, and they're at the little private booth, the one where you actually you've already kind of bought it, but you may not have paid for it, but they've said you've got it, and they're just trying to get the right size on. And this man was so happy. He was so happy. And his wife, I guess maybe his future wife was so happy. And you could tell that it was his first day with a watch of this caliber. And as I was pulling in back up between these two, as I was pulling in, there was a guy in a Tesla X who was walking out with his girlfriend, skipping out, and just he couldn't believe it was on his wrist. So you see these things, and you look in the watch world and you say, these guys are just starting this journey of having a luxury timepiece that they're going to enjoy. It'll be a part of their life for the next, the next 20 years, and it'll live with them, if they choose to wear it, of course. But all of those people look just excited to have watches, and so we see that inside of a Rolex AD. It's kind of nice. And I walked in and I asked, can you put a link on? And he said, I'd love to. I had the links there, and within 5 minutes, I had the link there. He made sure that it looked good and snapped on, and it was fine. So this awkward moment when you're inside of a kind of a busy AD at the time, and they've got my watch, and I'm standing there with a watch roll, and another gentleman comes up to me and says, "Hey, what kind of jeans are those?" And he names the brand of my jeans. And he says, "Oh, what kind of jacket is that?" And he names the man of my jacket. I go, "Are you in fashion?" And this guy is some kind of like stylist, I guess, when on his off time. But it makes you wonder: do they add this to the profile? Do they add the kind of jeans that you wear? But I think if you're going to the AD, if you've got a good excuse and you can bring it with you, right? Like, here's the engagement ring, or here's that baby we're about to have. Maybe it ups your chances. Maybe. So they had good security. They still had the Tudor Black Bay Chrono 24. The Black Bay Chrono Panda on the outside. That campaign's still going as far as advertisement. None of those were in the cases. What I saw in the case: the Z Blue Milgauss, the two-tone Rolex Daytona. Those two watches have been in the case every single time I've ever been to this AD. And let's talk a little bit about Daytona two-tone. I think Rolex kind of missed an opportunity to fill in the dials there, the sub-dials. If you look at the two-tone, that's one of the only Daytonas, I guess. I want to get a white gold and a two-tone. But there's some of the two-tones that Daytonas where they chose not to actually fill in the sub-dials. And to me, owning two Daytonas, the sub-dials and the contrast of it is probably one of the more enjoyable parts of it. And the two-tone that they had in the case today had the absence of it. If you look at it up close, those sub-dials are just completely blank. And so although, they've got now really engineered gold that's cut out really, really precisely, that's taking the place of concentric sub-dials, it misses an opportunity to catch the light with those concentric circles. And now you've
like that radial
yes,
decoration in the sub.
If you see those in person every day when you're in traffic with the natural sunlight and it just kind of glistens in your eyes, that's why you like the Daytona. And in the two-tone model, there's several versions of those that just have it black. What it shows off is their ability to cut a diamond. Not a diamond piece, a gold piece, in with those letters in it. So you've got this really precise 6 that's cut out of a circle, right? You've got this really precise 9 that's there. But to me, if you're going to buy that, the concentric circles inside the sub-dials is really what makes it go.
Mm-hmm. And you don't mean just the outer ring, right? You want the whole thing to be radially
correct.
Guilloche.
I just think they miss. It's the only one that is basically blank. If you think about it, and you look through it, the current models. So yeah, I like these. But if you have the black dial with, here. This is the problem. Okay. So right now you have your 20, your 40, and your 8 and your 60 is now gold figurines inside of a floating circle that they've cut out of a piece of gold.
I see.
All right. But if you scroll one over.
This one?
You've got concentric. You've got now there's texture there in between each one of these numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
with the champagne and white dials, you have that outer ring that's radially guilloche, whereas
exactly
ones. Yeah.
And so to me, they missed a little bit of an opportunity to show off, because I don't know.
This is similar to your.
Yep. Very similar.
I mean, I don't mind the champagne dial. I think it goes better with a full gold piece. I think with this one, it's the white
For sure.
That's a little nicer.
Yeah, I'm a buyer right there. What's the, is that what, 18? No, 17? Yeah, 18,000.
17,950.
Only when they call you.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
So you said you had to buy an extra link for the 165?
No, it came with it, but it was 11 links at the last position, or I could be at 12 links in the middle position and have, on that 5-digit. So I had him add a link, and then he moved it toward the center.
I see.
And that's what.
You were just getting the link put on at the
Correct.
AB.
Yep. But they were nice. I mean, they were thrilled to do it. I mean, they were jumping at the chance to be able to put it on there.
Of course. I mean, look, if you have someone at your authorized dealer, and still most authorized dealers at least have one person who is like that, they appreciate seeing these older, classic pieces, for sure.
Yeah.
As much as they're invested in, moving what they have from the current catalog.
You can pull it up on the stream. I don't know. There's probably have dozens of viewers. I haven't been watching the chat, but I'll show you what I walked in with. I'll send it to you. You can bring it up.
In the Instagram you're going to show.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay.
But yeah, it was cool to see people that were in that state of, it was either their first watch or they were just thrilled to get whatever they had just purchased, because they were people that were just absolutely thrilled about getting the watch there. And
but you realize, right? This week they are really giving away those watches
for sure. And this is the time to get it, because in a week from now you're paying 3%, 3.5% more. So if you actually can get something that you've been thinking about within this next period, when they swipe your card and it's the next day of the next year, it's going to be the new price by rule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Did you send it?
Yeah, 1 second. All right, you should have it.
Yes. Oh, nice.
This is what is actually at the bank. I put my Omega back there, but I've been wearing the Navitimer.
That's a cool 3-piece chronograph collection, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah.
For different occasions. And then I wear the Tudor and the Omega the most.
Yeah. Amazing, man. The 16520 is still my favorite out of these, but
yeah,
they
it's in
all
great
have
shape.
something else.
So let me ask you this: if it's got the sticker on the back, should I remove that sticker? It's kind of gross having that thing on there.
I think that I would keep it, but then again, it is what it is. It's gonna, in time, it's gonna transform. I'll tell you that. So it's not gonna stay the same if you wear it, and you do wear it. So you might as well remove it, but you can keep wearing it with that on. I mean, I have with my 16710, my GMT Master 2 Coke.
Yeah,
I had a service sticker, which I didn't remove.
you just left it on.
Yeah, and it's fine. And also for me, okay, I will give you this tip. For someone like me who likes changing out the straps, right? I take out the bracelets, put on the strap. I'm very careful about it, but it helps me not to scratch the case back, right?
Yeah.
In any way. Like it eliminates that chance because I'm already careful about it. I mean, if you're really gung ho about it,
Yeah.
the stupid sticker is not going to protect anything.
Right.
But yeah,
It'll naturally come off, probably, right?
it might not. Mine kind of melded into into the.
So, all right. So, Nick Butter, I want you to
Yes.
guess how much I bought. I bought the Breitling for. Just you say you like the first one the best. What was the price on the Breitling? As I put Lionel Messi away, the Golden Boot.
I like the quick gesture. Yeah, that is the Breitling Navi timer 7806 70s.
All right, so let's run a poll. Can you get the polls open? I'm gonna put three prices out, and we'll know at least Nick Butter has voted. $20. Meech says 20.
I want to just do a poll to ask people which one is your favorite. Let's take the guesses on price, but for the poll, if it's okay, which one is your favorite? Breitling Navi timer reference 7806.
Hey, when you walk into a watch shop, make sure all of your watches are actually showing the right time. Okay, you don't want to have your shoes untied, and you want to have your belt and your pants pulled up to the right. I'm just kidding.
Honestly, I mean, it doesn't sound so absurd. But then
So, what do
again,
you think of people when they post their watches and it's not the right date on the day they post it?
I don't mind it. But for the situation that you're talking about, I don't think I've really walked into a watch shop with more than two watches, honestly. But I mean, this is
Man, he's a watch nerd with me. Are you kidding me? He has a Breitling as well. I'm just walking here to flex. Let me flex on the AD. I mean, they've sold me a bunch of shitters. So, yeah.
all right. So it's posted already. Which one is your favorite, guys? The Breitling
Yeah,
Navi?
it's 1.8. The middle one's 1.8.
What's up?
That's all right. 116518 is the gold Daytona.
Oh, right. It's not the two-tone, of course, 1.8. My bad, though. So
you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. 7806 Rolex Daytona 116518, and then Rolex Daytona 1620.
So what's funny is Meech said $20, and we have 10 grand. Meech is actually closer. So Meech,
good call, Meech.
Meech, you're the winner, and $2,500. $2,500. A 1972 7806 perfectly loomed twin jets. The date still works. Manual wind. Hey, when you turn the top on this, it feels really nice. Really nice. It gives you the nice little playback that you want. When you wind it, it feels so good. This is one thing on here. Zoom into the one on the left. A couple of things you want to look for if you're ever buying one of these old ones that are nice value. You see the hands there on the right? You see I have a hand on the right? You see this is a sword on the right. On the right side, that should look a little bit more red than the others. If it's an MK, if it's in the first two generations, you'll see this will be in red with a sword. And the one in the middle on the bottom, you'll see this is all one motion. And this is probably the, I would say if you want to be colorblind, it's probably blue. But it's a different shape. You can see the top right one is a sword, and the one in the bottom is a constant is a constant
You mean the run?
pyramid. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then on the top left one, this is the blue one.
Mhm.
This one should look blue, and in some light it should look blue, and the one on the right should look in some fashion red. So, and you kind of highlighted, I guess, last time I was on the outer ring here. So when you put this under fluorescent light or any kind of UV light, the outside red that's both on the inside in black and on the outside in white really light up. I mean, this turns into a Christmas tree where you can see.
Yeah, I still have that picture, so I'm going to quickly
Yeah, go ahead.
highlight that again.
Look at that. Hey, but I can only get so much of it with the camera, but when all of it's there, oh, it's so cool that when it's you're only getting a little taste right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not getting all of it. You're just getting a little. That's just a lick, I think. Yeah. Cool watch, $2,500. I mean, am I gonna go broke on that? Am I gonna go broke on that, young Brando?
No, I mean the look. 60s Navi timers for me, it's the sweet spot, but you can't go wrong with the 70s either. Those are great watches. Still great value for money. And if you look at the trends again, the two iconic chronographs from the same time period, the Rolex Daytona, the Omega Speedmaster, they have already taken off. The Navi timer still hasn't, and it may never have. But that means there's still a value proposition there. If you love your chronographs, if you are actually enamored by that reverse panda slide rule kind of aesthetic that's immediately recognizable, that's always a great watch. And I think
we should go deep on this one. One of the problems with this watch that I got is that the band is not original. What I think happened based on this condition, based on this condition,
would you rather have someone ratty leather band to be original? Come on, it's a leather band. Who cares if it's original or not?
Right. No, but what I think happened with this watch is that there was probably the stainless steel mesh band that's on there, like the Milanese loop kind of style band that's on there. And I think they probably threw this one into a safe. It's not worn. I mean, there's not much to it. It just doesn't feel like it's used. And so for $2,500, I figured I wasn't going to go broke on it. And I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's slick. Anytime that you can, the big eye on the Breitling, this is an iconic 41 millimeter watch. I had to have it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's a very wearable 41 millimeter as well. It's actually not.
And on the outside, I mean, it's got some play that you see on the outside there. The teeth on that, I wouldn't compare it necessarily to a fluted bezel of a Rolex. I wouldn't say that. But as far as the quality of the spacing and where they're cutting and how they're cutting, it's pretty darn good. They don't have to travel the same amount of distance that the fluted bezel does, but that it adds something to it in real life when you've got the texture on the outer ring.
Look, the fluted bezel is a decorative element that grew out of something functional, which was the basically teeth that the closing machine should hang on when it's closing off that case that's supposed to be watertight and dustproof and everything. And Rolex ultimately used it as a decorative element, making it a little finer, a little bit more intricate. In this case, you have something utilitarian, which doesn't mean it can't be beautiful, which doesn't mean it can't catch the light in a certain way and still strike you as something fascinating. Um,
Right.
but it's they used to be beaded in the earlier generations. That was a little more maybe decorative than the serrated
Right.
of the bezel, which is more utilitarian. But I think I prefer this, honestly. The beaded version, I will show you that in a second.
Rice
It's
bead.
a little
Is it
too delicate. If
the one with the rice bead or no?
no, that's not what I mean. I have
Oh,
to show you the picture.
yeah. There's two different kinds of mesh that they have. The one that's really fine, like the Melanie's loop,
Like
that
this,
you would see on the Super Ocean.
like this, for example. You see,
Yeah.
that's the grip in the earlier
Ye-
Navi timers.
Yeah, I love it. I
And
mean,
these
that's
are,
elegant as well. And you look at the Tonda on the outside of the new Parmigiani. And it's got a little bit of Oris feel between Oris and
oh,
this.
no. Oris came.
I know you
Look,
hate Oris. I shouldn't have
I
said that.
love
I'm
no,
saying texture on.
no. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, I love the professor, but sometimes he says some stuff that has absolutely no basis at all because he comes from an emotional standpoint. Oris came out with that after Parmigiani came out, and fluting is not something that Oris invented. I mean, fluting has been there for, like, there are Patek Calatravas that have that
Yeah.
Parmigiani fluting, so it has nothing to do with Oris.
This is a great example though of the texture on the outside.
So it has, I mean, I don't know who made that connection in the professor's head, but he threw it out there, and now you are grasping on it as if it's something of a
No.
fact. Please
If you look
stop.
at both of them, they both have the little, I don't know.
It has nothing to do with it. I
All
mean,
right.
you can only make that sort of judgment looking at pictures. If you saw the actual watch,
You're right.
quality difference is
I'm-
just
I
there's
can
no
see what
separate.
Hey, listen, I can see what he's talking about.
Well, then you got to get your eyes checked, huh?
All right.
But yes, this is the beaded bezel that they used in earlier examples, but the serrated one that's
I
your
got you,
one.
Nick Butter. Eight grand. I mean, the guess wasn't too bad. Hey, but for 2,500, each was only 24.80 off.
Yeah. The serrated one is obviously more functional, but I also think Navitimer is a watch that became in a way more beautiful to me, at least in its iterations. If you
Yeah.
saw the earlier example, that was also all black, had
Yeah.
less contrast.
Yep.
So between the reverse panda look of the main dial and the white outer periphery that's established by the slide rule, I think this is a beautiful aesthetic for the Navitimer.
Zoom
Again,
in a little bit if you could on the outside of the ring. I want to point out a couple of things that I think are cool.
I can't. That's
as far as it goes. Okay, so you see on the outside where it's white, the outer track,
Mhm.
you've got markers that are going up from the bottom there that are in black, that are quite precise. On the exact opposite side, where the black starts, those same exact markers are the exact same distance in white.
Mhm.
And so the preciseness that you see on this is, you've got a lot going on there, but as you look a little bit closer, you can see that there's a lot of yin and yang that's going on, where it's playing off of each one of those markers. As your eye hits it, it's got both the light and the dark to kind of complete it. And you've got so much going on in the dial, but what you see in the middle here is those hands. Those hands are a different texture than any of the white that you see. It's different than any of the subdials. It's different than the outer track. It's different than the silver. It's what you want to read. And when you look down and your eyes start to look at this and get trained to see this Navitimer, all you see is the white. the white is what's brightening your day. You say, oh, that's what time it is. And so there's a lot going on here of the dial. You got 5,000 numbers that can do advanced calculus right on your wrist, but it tells you the time.
Hey
right
man,
with the hands.
it's like it's the first smartwatch in a way. It's a
It
computer
is.
on the wrist. That's what the Chronomat and after that the Navitimer was supposed to be. That's the smartwatch of its time.
Yep. So you want to let's bring over the two on the right. I got a couple of comments on these two on the right. So it drives me to the Zenith Daytona versus the other one. You know, the symmetry that you get in the Zenith Daytona, the 5-digit 16520. You've got your markers here on the outside that are at the exact halfway point. And it doesn't quite get in the way of the one in the center, of the watch in the center, because if you see where the 1 starts and the 15 and the 30 starts, it's right where the 1 and right where the 5 starts. So it kind of cuts it in half as well on this. And so if you have any 6-digit, like from early 2000s on, you're going to get these subdials that are just raised just a little bit higher, right? Just a little bit, because it's not a straight shot from between the 4 and the 5 and the 1 and the 5. It's not. It's up a little bit. And then the two other major differences is on the one on the left, you can see that the modern Daytona has the running seconds in the bottom center section. But before that, the running seconds was in the top left position. So you can see here the 41 was the 4130 that came out. Was there in-house?
Yes. That's the in-house caliber.
Place the center dot, the running seconds in the center there, whereas the Zenith movement and before would have it in the top left position at 9 o'clock.
That's right, as it should be.
as it should be. Yeah,
I like that. I like that. It's a nice throwback, and it's one of the quick ways that when you have two pre-ceramic Daytonas next to each other, one with the 4030, which is based on the Zenith El Primero, and one with the 4130. The quickest way you can tell is the continuously running seconds. One has it at 6 o'clock. Zenith based has 9 o'clock. And then, like you said, for ones who have eyes that are a little more trained, you can look at the perfect lines that crisscross right in the middle, right? Because you
exactly.
have one
super chat.
Nice. Nick Butter, thank you so much. $10. Thank you so much. I don't have 8K, but let's support with $10. Now you just need $24.90 to break even from the purchase.
Right.
I wish I could tell you, Nick, that some part of it is going to JB, but I'm pocketing that 10, so I don't think
this is charity.
You helped JB. So
I'm a big supporter, and I'm glad that thanks for your support, Nick Butter.
Thank you.
I'm glad to be a guest on the show.
Hey man, I'm honored to have you. And the next thing that you can immediately tell, even if we had, let's say, 16520 like this and a 11650, both with a white dial, the other thing you could immediately tell, as JB very perceptively observed, you can draw two very straight lines, right, through the two subdials, the center of the face of the watch, right through the crown, and also in the same way, slice the coronet in half through the center of the watch and the 12-hour counter. Whereas the chronograph registers on any of the 4130 caliber Daytonas is shifted ever so slightly upwards. And it's only people who are afflicted with OCD like us
Uh-huh.
to catch these sorts of details. I don't think it makes a huge difference on a day-to-day basis. But I obsess over these things, and that's one of the reasons I prefer the 5-digit to the 6-digit and later.
Yep. They're fun watches. I think I've got to take the back off though of the Daytona. Now that I've got it fit,
The sticker, you mean?
the sticker's got to go.
It's okay, man.
So, is it gonna cause me some sort of rash if you keep it on your wrist with perspiration?
I have no clue, man. You're not talking to a physician, huh? I don't know. I don't know. The only thing I know is again, I've seen many Rolex watches that have been worn that way, and it just it basically withers with time, and doesn't really come off. So you either take it off completely yourself. I think wearing it is kind of deciding, hey, this is going to like corrode and become one with the case back in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So you better if you're gonna wear the watch, you better take it off sooner
I
than
think
later.
so. It makes me wonder though. 20 years of stickiness has been on there.
I don't
Is
think
there-
it's gonna be an easy
is there-
operation.
I don't think so.
Probably a hair dryer needs to be involved in
Right.
this, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Probably something like that.
The glue on that's going to be gross.
Yeah, so you don't need to also introduce, your own bodily fluids and make that even more of a complex solution, so to speak.
I'll tell you though, when you get one like this, it's in incredible shape. It's like it's not worn though.
No, I like that. Look, man, I mean, again, for me, who is someone who loves vintage watches, this is actually, in a way, a sweet nightmare, because what do I do with this? Right? It's not worn, so it's too new for me. Right? I would be confused. But for someone like you who is making the trip backwards, in the sense that you like a lot of contemporary stuff, and this something is a this is something that's a boon for you, because this is as new, full set.
I know.
Has the sticker on the back. It's practically a new watch, but it's a time capsule, right? It gives you the feeling of a classic Daytona, that first generation of self-winding, and in a way the last of the vintage, or neo vintage, if you want to call it that way. So it's a great reference. I mean, it's my absolute favorite when it comes to Daytonas. I think it was a great catch. I'm so glad that
2023 you're going to see it in person.
I hope so. I think probably me, you're more than welcome in Los Angeles, but possibly me visiting Texas seems more likely at this point.
Do it.
I should.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it a night, but thanks for having me on and sharing these pieces.
Absolutely.
I enjoy your show and love all the character, everybody that joins in. So got a growing community, and I love what you do.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and you have certainly been one of the most loyal supporters of this channel. So I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad you have taken the plunge on these two pieces. I think that this is, look, I mean, a lot of people don't mind niche. I think a lot of people would be lucky to have a 3-piece collection like this. So this is great.
You're lucky man. Yeah, I enjoy them. All right, thanks for having me on. Take care. Have a good evening, everybody.
Take care, JB.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thank you for sharing these pieces. Great 3-piece chronograph collection. 116, 518 in the middle. the yellow gold, black ceramic bezel, black dial, diamond set with Arabic numbers at the quarters, 15, 30, 45. Then you have the reference 7806, 7806, Breitling Navi timer from the 70s, which followed upon the classic and now iconic reference 806, has the additional date window launched there between 4 and 5 o'clock. The classic twin jet logo, which is one of my favorites. And then you have, of course, an absolute classic, one of the last greats, so to speak, a production run from 1988 to 2000. 1988 was the year where Rolex, in a way, wanted to catch up with some of its competitors who all had integrated self-winding chronograph movements powering their classics. I mean, we are speaking of Hoya here. We're speaking, of course, of Zenit to a certain extent. So they actually introduced their new Daytona 16520 with caliber 4030, which was based on Zenit El Primero caliber 400. So that is an absolute classic, which remained in production until 2000, which is when Rolex basically became modern and started up this whole mythology of making everything in-house in a vertically integrated facility. And of course, that 4130 caliber, which is the in-house chronograph caliber for Rolex, is the one that powers the chronograph in the middle. But 16520 was powered by 4030, which was based on Zenit's El Primero caliber, named thus because it was one of the first, if not the first, integrated self-winding chronograph calibers in the entire world. So 3 beautiful watches, three different vibes, right? You have the 41 millimeter in stainless steel with the date on the right. You have the precious metal on Oyster Flex with the additional glimmer, with the additional sheen, with the additional attraction of the brilliant cut diamonds on the dial on Oyster Flex, which I think is a great contrast. I think there's just something quite beautiful, especially I think what I consider to be a cognitive dissonance between the precious metal of the case and the essentially rubber material of the band. Of course, there is a titanium reinforcement, and Rolex insists calling the Oyster Flex a bracelet, which I understand by all means. But on the surface of it, I think there's a great interplay between that material, the gold case, and that half end link as well, of course. Here you also have the black ceramic tachometer bezel, and then you have the black dial, the black subdials, which are accented by those beautiful radially guillocheed outer rings. I think that's a great watch. A little bit more jewelry-like, more ostentatious, perhaps, than your stainless steel sports chronograph, but it's meant to be that way, and it makes absolute sense in a 3-piece chronograph collection like this. And then you have on on the right with that white dial. An absolute classic. You know, you can, that's the kind of piece you could basically wear on any occasion. You know, pop out that oyster band, you know, put it on a nice leather strap. If you want to still keep it sporty, you know, choose something that is a lighter shade of brown, perhaps like a tan, you know, what a lot of these fancy brands call golden, with contrast stitching. That would be a beautiful touch. If you want to take it on a more formal occasion, you know, if you're suited and booted, or if you are perhaps wearing a dinner jacket or something of that sort, um, you are invited to like a festive occasion, you know, black tie, in which case you can easily put this on a black, you know, leather strap, and that Daytona could be a beautiful dress watch as well. I made an entire video actually about how you could wear your sports chronograph, classic sports chronograph, as a veritable dress watch, using the example of the predecessor to that Navitimer 806, and how the two distinguished members, two important drivers of Team Lotus, have worn their Breitling Navitimer reference 806s. So feel free to check out that video too, whenever you would like. But yeah, I think that's a beautiful watch. Again, the black dial of the 5-digit reference is also a great deal, also a relative value proposition, considering today's market on Daytonas, which continues to dip, of course. So no rush if you're in the market for any of these watches that we have been talking about today. But by all means, I think, again, 16520 is going to be probably the next big thing, because ultimately the ceramic Daytona is the one that is in production, and somehow Rolex is going to do something new with the Daytona. So but I don't expect anything too radical either. So I'm not sure how, quote unquote, collectible the most recent generation is going to be, except for some of the pieces that are a little more rare and a little more limited. But when it comes to the 5-digit, since it is built on an externally sourced movement, since it is the kind of piece that brings together not one, not two, but basically, you know, 3 different icons in the same case, right? Rolex, Zenith, and the Daytona, right, in the same case. When it comes to the chronograph, somehow you have some sort of trilogy there, and that's not going to come back, right? You know, I don't think Rolex is going to source their chronograph caliber from another maker, or even if they do, I don't think that's going to be something they advertise and foreground, and I don't think it's going to be part of their marketing copy. So these pieces that were produced for about 12 years at the end of the last century, at the end of the millennium, so to speak, are going to be more desirable as time goes on. And I think the way the market is trending into 2023 and the way it will continue to trend in 2023, there can be great opportunities to pick up either the black or white dial of these. The black, I think, is more classically Rolex. We are talking about 16520. Listen, I mean, it's a beautiful piece. I think in a way it's sportier, um, but the white dial is just so much more versatile. I feel like it's more of an all-purpose piece. It's more universal. It's more unisex. Um, it's more open to. It's more modular, right? You know, you can wear it on the bracelet, you can wear it on a leather band, and it won't look off. And it just the proportions of this watch in general, of the Daytona period, right? You know, that's something that has not changed much over the years. Make it really a watch for all seasons. There are reasons why certain watches are actually so appealing, so widely considered, and so well liked. And it's not all hype. Uh, of course, in many ways, the Rolex Daytona is one of the first hype watches, and it is not for everyone. Um, Again, it's a watch that has grown on me over time. I'm not even sure if it is the watch for me. There are so many other chronographs that I like more, starting with the one I'm wearing today, starting with the Breguet Type 20, which I'm very happy, almost proud to own. Um, the Navitimer 806, not 7806, which I will one day have the pleasure to own. But again, this is something I keep saying because I just find the Americanism of that expression to be too delicious not to be said. I wouldn't kick this 16520 out of bed for eating crackers. It is a beautiful watch. It is a thing of beauty. We have about 10, 12 more minutes, unless someone jumps on. I'm happy to wind down the discussion, but if you have any questions, if you have any issues that you need me or that you would like me to address, if you want me to, if you want me to respond to any of your demands, by all means, send me a question with a super chat. Hit the like button. That's for free, and it really helps a lot. It makes all the difference. I wanted to see. Oh, I wanted to see which watch is winning the poll. We had 10 votes, 3 of which went to the Navitimer, 2 went to the precious metal Daytona on Oyster Flex, the most recent generation, which I unfortunately mistyped there. It should be 116518 rather than 503. That is the two-tone reference. And then 16520, which has half the votes and therefore won the poll. And Aussie Expat is saying, see the pick? He got rid of the Tudor. Well, he didn't. He just didn't bring it to his authorized dealer when he was getting that link added to his new Daytona. Right. So again, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Nick Butter, OG Baby Girl, and Jake Brooks with your super chats. And JB was also very generous to jump on the panel and even helped me take a short break there. I'm always very much indebted, man. You're my brother, you're my friend. I really appreciate you. And everyone who has joined in from the chats, Steel Steez, the Dry Down, Aiden Valento, Racing R, of course, who is going to be with us for this show tomorrow, where we are going to talk about the new directions that he's taking with his collection, and some new things that are happening with his life as well. Nick dropped by, Aussie Expat, of course, Big Meech. These are my friends who are always here. Floodland was there for a little bit. I'm sorry if I missed you, but love you too. And of course, Nick Butter helped us with the discussion. Basil's, again, one of the outstanding supporters of this channel. Thank you, everyone. If you want to support the channel, you know how. It is in the crawling ticker. The links are pinned there in the chat, but they're also included in the video description. So you can always send in your contributions with PayPal or Cash App. If you join me on Patreon, and I will show you also some of the things that I do for my supporters in the last 5 minutes. But for now, we have the $10 per month initiate level, which means that I send each and every one of you at least 3 links a day to great deals in watches online. Usually a little more, I throw in bonuses here and there. So it adds up to about 100 different links per month, which I think is a great deal for $10. And a lot of these watches are, of course, already great value propositions. But the idea is really to open a discussion so I can help you make an educated decision when you are, in fact, ready to take the plunge, when you are ready to pull the trigger, when you are actually realizing that yearning that you had for quite some time to get that new watch. But a lot of times, since I structure these links around specific themes and specific kinds of watches, it also ends up being very educational, right? So it really introduces you to categories and genres of watches that you have missed out on, that have fallen through the cracks, that perhaps you are not familiar with, that are certainly not hype watches in any way, or it shows you different kinds of watches in categories that you are already familiar with, right? Anyone knows that the Patek Philippe Calatrava is a certain pedigree in dress watches, but do you know, for example, in this or that era, this or that brand actually made, let's say, self-winding dress watches that are every bit as good, if not better, than a Patek Philippe Calatrava, right? This is what I basically offer in that site. And it's 4 days left, basically. If you join in the remaining 4 days, you get that $10 per month rate grandfathered into the next year, and that's what my current 5 members are getting for sure, in whatever rate they are paying today. They won't have to pay a penny more because they have been supporting me from the very beginning. and beyond Patreon as well. So, but yes, if you get your foot in the door before the end of the year, you will get this service and more, because I will basically, starting with January, add new services to that membership, but also increase the price to $15. So by all means, if you start in the next in the next 4 days, you're going to be saving a little bit of money, but you're also going to be supporting me for a little longer. So it's a win-win for all of us. Nick Butter says, speaking of links, you should open a site where you are authorized dealer to sell watches and style clothing and so on down the line. That could be an interesting road. I'm not putting it off the table, but I'm not really interested in selling watches at this point in time. I don't want to be an authorized dealer for any particular brand, because I feel like it would take from my independence to be invested in selling this or that brand. I feel much more independent this way. I'm only beholden to my audience. I'm only at your behest. Nothing else influences my opinions. No one else gives me direction. It's only you guys who give me your feedback, who ask me the questions, who lead me in certain ways, sometimes down certain rabbit holes. But I have enough. I'm enough of a truffle pig, so to speak, where I can come up with something, come back with something out of that rabbit hole. So I'm quite happy with that model so far. I have a couple of projects when it comes to expanding on the style element of the channel, and that's something that will start unfolding in 2023. And I'm very excited to share it with you once I have something more substantive. And I'm not just throwing this out here, Nick, by the way, as a teaser, but since you threw out the idea, I want to say I am responding to it. That is something that I'm working on, but I don't have anything substantive to reveal yet, right? So if I had a product right now, even some sort of prototype, this is where I will share it first. And I'm sure, some of my listeners who have been seeing me trying things out, showing you different kinds of products, probably already know what I'm talking about. So it's not a secret exactly, but it's not ready to show yet. I would rather have something more complete, something that I'm almost ready to offer to you, than show something that I can't send to you almost immediately. Show something that doesn't necessarily live up to my standards. Hey man, if I had something working, I would certainly use it for myself, don't you think, Big Meech? I could use some hair plugs with my continuously receding hairline, I would think, right? So certainly that's not the kind of product you can expect from me. Not the hair plugs, probably nothing that relates to dental hygiene either. I'm pretty bad with that as well. With all the coffee that I drink and all the cigars I smoke, I cannot be an ambassador for that. What else? Um, Certainly not, uh, you know, eyebrow threading. That's not gonna take any sponsorship from me. Maybe some wet shaving action, maybe I can get like a German brand of razors to sponsor this channel, and I will do live wet shaving, every day, maybe in the morning, or every week at least. That could be an interesting direction to take. But hey, those are all great ideas. But yeah, hair plugs, probably not. Dental hygiene, probably not. Eyebrow threading, probably not. But I'm not going to take anything else off the table, Meech. All right. It's midnight. It's again time for me to say goodbye. Thank you for being with me here for almost 4 hours again. I really appreciate you. I don't take your presence and support for granted. Once again, JB, who joined the panel, I appreciate you dearly. And everyone who has super chatted with JB, OG Baby Girl, and Nick Butter, of course. I love you all. Again, it really does help. Please hit the like button on your way out. That makes all the difference already. If you have not subscribed, please do. I'm here with live streams on a daily basis and with more content as the year unfolds. 2023 is going to be a great year, and I cannot wait with everything that I have to show you for it. Hey, I think if I have some participation, maybe towards the end of the week, I will do a marathon for us to greet the new year. So I look forward to that. But until then, until tomorrow, where I will most certainly have Racing R as my guest at 8 p.m. Pacific, Wednesday, December 28th. I'm going to try to have an earlier show during the day. Let's see how that goes. I cannot promise anything, but I'll try to be here for you in either case. Thank you for being there for me. Thank you for everything. Hit the like button on the way out. I'll see you tomorrow. And until then, I bid you adieu. Goodbye, friends.